Well, the wine ran out at the wedding in the town of Cana. Mother of Jesus turns to her son and tells him that they have no wine, with the obvious expectation that he should do something about it. Jesus protests that his hour has not yet come. Jesus means that his time has not yet come to be the Messiah. It is not yet time for him to reveal who he is to the world. But Jesus' mother just goes ahead assuming that Jesus is going to work a miracle, and he does. To the surprise of the chief steward, not only has Jesus turned water into wine, but it's a good vintage, better than what they had already been served. The story ends by stating that the disciples see what Jesus has done and they believe in him. This is the first miracle of Jesus, or as the gospel writer John calls them, signs, because they are signs to people about the identity of Jesus. And it works. The disciples of Jesus see the miracle and they take it as a sign of who he really is, the Messiah. The miracle of water becoming wine, like all miracles, surprises people, because by definition, a miracle is something outside of the natural order of things. The chief steward at the wedding does not know the recently delivered wine is from a miracle, so he is surprised that the host would serve the good wine after they had all had their fill. The disciples know that the wine was water not long ago, and only an extraordinary person such as the Messiah could do that miracle. Now, we may not experience many miracles in our lives, but we certainly experience a lot of surprises. Life is full of surprises. There is an old saying that life happens while you are making other plans. And I doubt if there is anyone here whose life has turned out just as they thought it would. And I would bet that almost everyone is in a place or circumstances that they never thought that they would be years ago. I wish I had a dime for everyone that I have visited in the hospital who said, I never thought that this would happen to me. You know, events in our lives rarely happen as we planned or predicted. There are always things that come up or happen that we never expected. Events in our lives often happen before we're ready for them. It is said in school, we have a lesson, we study, we prepare, and then we have a test. But in life, we have a test, and then comes the lesson. In school, the quality of our studying usually determines the success of the test. But in life, how well we respond to the test determines the success of the lesson. In life, sometimes the best lessons come from the tests that we have failed, not succeeded. We usually fail a test because we have misjudged who we are. We fail because we're not the person that we thought we were. There are two fundamental questions to answer for ourselves in life. The first question is, who am I? And the second question is, why am I here? Or, what is my purpose in life? Oftentimes, we answer these questions unconsciously, without being aware of them, but we do answer them. It could be said that our lives are a struggle to answer these two questions of who am I and what is my purpose. We are constantly working on matching up the identity in our minds with the reality of how we act in the world. The tests and surprises that happen to us in life either affirms or challenges our answers to these questions. We find out that we are either better than we thought or that we are not the person we thought we were. One of the greatest challenges that I faced in my life was caring for my son, who had an ever-deteriorating disease called Krabbe's. I discovered in the challenge to care for him that in some ways I was stronger than I thought, and in other ways I was much weaker than I thought. I was not the person I thought I was. I had to adjust my self-concept. I had to redefine who I was to fit more closely with my reality. That is not always an easy thing to do, and many of us try to avoid it because it's very uncomfortable. And as you know, any kind of change can make us feel uncomfortable or even downright scared. In general, psychologically, the older we get, the harder it is to accept change, and I personally know that in my own life. I find as I grow older, change is harder to deal with. But when we have this disconnect, though, between who I think I am and who I really am, we can either look in and examine ourselves or to see why that we did not act as we thought we would, or we can blame other people or circumstances, or maybe even both, for making us uncomfortable and something other than what we thought we were. For many people, blaming others is a preferred way of dealing with the conflict within our own minds. It is also the least constructive and effective way. But let me get back to change. You of the Great Depression and the World War II generation, you have seen more change in the world than all previous generations put together in all of history. Many of you grew up when horses were still being used for transportation and business. Could you have even imagined when you were a child that people would walk on the moon? What about having a phone that you would carry around with you and talk to almost anyone, anywhere in the world? Then think about all the social changes that have happened in your lifetime. Years ago, white people were uncomfortable, were actually comfortable with racism and keeping blacks and whites separate. And if we went back a little further in our nation's history, well, people were comfortable with slavery. But we could not imagine going back to that now. And even though the New Testament does not condemn slavery, and the Apostle Paul actually condones it several times, almost everyone now sees slavery as evil and immoral, something which God would not approve of. But as I said, in many of our lifetimes, people were comfortable with racism. Now we're not, even though much work remains to diminish and eliminate racism because it still persists. Years ago, people were comfortable with the subjugation of women. It was not that long ago that we could hear frequently, a woman's place was in the home. And we would laugh when Jackie Gleason would tell his wife, "I'll knock you to the moon, Alice." But few would dare to say that now. I think that few of us would recommend going back to those days. We are no longer comfortable denying women certain rights. Women still do not earn the same as a man for the same work, so there is still work to be done in the drive for women's equality. Remember when you would rarely see a handicapped person? As a society, we used to seclude and restrain people with disabilities, and we still do in many places. But the disabled are gaining more rights and equal access. Seeing a disabled person would make us uncomfortable and afraid sometimes. But now we're more comfortable. And I don't think that any of us would want to take away or deny them the rights and accesses that they have gained over the years. These and other changes have gone on and are going on in our world and in our lives. And the rate of change is getting faster and faster. For many of us, our comfort zones are disappearing. Places we thought were safe for us to hold onto our prejudices and partiality are growing smaller and smaller. We're forced to deal with people and issues that years ago we would never have needed to consider. And things which are outside the realm of our experience can make us feel very uncomfortable, even afraid. It becomes even more uncomfortable and scary when it is in our own sphere of family, friends, and acquaintances. And that's what happened for some of you when a member of our congregation came to church dressed differently than you had expected. It was one of those life-happen moments, a surprise you did not expect or ever could predict. Someone we thought we knew. Someone who we had defined and determined would be a certain way forever was no longer what we expected. A loved and respected member of our fellowship was now different. Someone who was in a man's role and dressed as a man, now dressed as a woman, and we're not sure what her role was. He was now a she, and we really didn't know what that meant. For many of you, it was just a surprise, and you did not think that there was really any more problem than that. For others, it was a surprise, and you were upset because you did not have advance notice of it, but you fully supported our member in her change. Still others felt that this was a surprise that they were accepting, but they also thought, well, this is a flaunting, and an in-your-face, inconsiderate of other people, showing off in which they felt that their feelings were not taken into account. And then there were a few who were enraged because they felt insulted and assaulted. And there are other feelings and interpretations, but these are the main reactions which I will try to address. Some months ago, the member in question started putting together a lifetime of experiences and feelings which he had repressed. He struggled long and hard seeking guidance in prayer, in deeply honest conversation with his spouse, in professional therapy, and in pastoral counseling. His struggle led him to the acceptance that he felt that his identity, his self-identity, was really that of another gender than the one that he was physically born with. This was no flippant or easy conclusion, but rather it came after great deliberation and exhaustive effort. It is a sincere and honest conclusion after great internal and external struggle. This was a surprise to the member in question, a shocking, actually, discovery of self-identity. We call this identifying with another gender than your physical characteristics as transgender. Recent studies show that a small percentage of the population, 0.3%, is transgender. Now, Reverend Mike and I have known of this struggle and realization of this member for about 2.5 months, and have kept the confidence of our office. We would have preferred to have had more time to get you all used to the idea and provide education, but life happens, and the things do not always go according to what we want. It was a surprise to most of you, and the best I can come up with to explain it is that once you've been in prison for years or for a lifetime, and you are released from your prison cell, you don't want to wait around in the prison yard until the outside world is all informed and ready for you to receive you. Finding your true identity in this way can be compared with being released from prison. The member in question may have a better explanation than that. I certainly can assure you that there was no intention of malice, and to put this in your face, as some of you may have felt. The member in question did not want to disrupt your life or the life of the church. She had hoped that a low-key approach and not making a big deal of it would be the best. Just let it go. She did not want any big announcement, didn't want to be in the spotlight, didn't want to cause controversy. She had hoped to be little noticed and did not anticipate the reaction of some of you. She took us at our word. And our word is spelled out in our welcoming and affirming statement, which is in your bulletin. It's in the back of your insert. We, the members of Pilgrim Congregational United Church of Christ, extend our invitation and welcome to all who wish to take part in the mission and ministry of the congregation, and affirm all persons of every race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, marital, or socioeconomic status as children of God. Well, this is who we say we are. But as another member commented, well, it's one thing to say these things and it's another to actually have to do them. There was no intent of hostility or offense on the member in question's part. I liken it to when someone with a disability comes in. I don't feel that Bill Earl is putting his disability in our faces when he attends worship. That is just who he is. But then Bill Earl made some of you feel uncomfortable just by being who he was, a disabled person. I was uncomfortable with Bill Earl at first, maybe even afraid, until I learned to understand his speech better. Then I realized he was just a regular person in a very unusual situation. He had cerebral palsy. And I think that you will find that the member in question is very much the same person that you knew by a male name and male dress. She is just as intelligent, just as caring, diligent, faithful, and kind. She now has a different name with different modest, feminine attire. She's the same person, only more honest about who she is. And let us appreciate how hard it is for this person to have done this. She has done a very courageous act, one in which she has trusted us to be accepting of her. It is natural for us to be a bit uncomfortable. Most of us here have not had much experience with transgender people, and we got to learn some new things. Reverend Mike and I intend to help us all become better educated. We are uncomfortable because, well, we're unsure of how to relate with the member's new identity. And I think we will find that it is not as hard as we might think. The hardest part for me will be grieving the loss of the identity that I knew this member as before. And for those of you who are more uncomfortable, I understand how you feel. I really do. I was once like you when I was younger. I was prejudiced against homosexuals and transgender people. But God showed me that 99% of gay and transgender people are people. They're human beings. They are children of God. And the same is true for many of you. I missed my place here. Got too emotional about that. And my feelings of discomfort, fear, and loathing toward them were more about me than anything about them. I blamed them for my discomfort, but I came to realize that my discomfort was from my own internal conflicts and fears. And the same may be true for you. The answer to your discomfort is more likely on the inside, not on the outside. It has to do with you knowing who you are, with you being comfortable with your own identity, because that's what it was for me. I have to close now. I can't touch upon all the issues that there are with this in a sermon. There's more of this issue that can be dealt with in just a small sermon like this. And I've only briefly touched upon issues. And I hope that what I have offered gives you some perspective, or at least something to think about. We must remember that our Lord Jesus accepted people whom others in society rejected. Jesus was all about saving the outcasts and the rejects, letting them know that they were children of God and they were loved by God. We know that God is still speaking to us. God is still revealing new insights because the world we live in is still changing. Part of those insights God offers us is how we can love each other more and how we can love each other better. And perhaps God is testing to see if the words we speak matches up with the actions we do. Are we truly welcoming and affirming? I know for most of us that that's true, without a doubt. And although we still may need a little bit of help in realizing it, it's true. And the passage from 1 Corinthians tells us that God gives us gifts which are to be used for the common good. God will help us when life happens, when we are surprised and confused and uncomfortable. God will be there. The world is fickle and unpredictable, and the only certainty in life is God. We need to put our trust in God, not our comfort zones, especially when so much around us is changing all the time. And when we put our trust in God, miracles can happen. Miracles more powerful than changing water into wine. Miracles such as realizing that we are all children of God and given the gift of loving one another. Amen.